Mm-hmm.
but we did manage to have it not be much more expensive to be traveling, even in like relatively first world expensive places to stay.
Mm.
So
Got it. Ooh, I can insert. I hit 1,000 subs recently, so now I can monetize. I can start serving ads on on my live stream. Okay, here's the. I would love to spend 3 months in Japan. I got to spend a week in Tokyo, but half of that I had to go to a cool conference, albeit, but like for
a
work.
week is like the minimum viable amount of time in Tokyo.
Yeah.
It is.
At least Google was paying for most of it, so.
I would take a week most places if someone else was paying. To be honest, I just like travel. Yeah, it was great. We spent a lot of time down in Osaka. We made some friends with folks that ran these crazy tiny music spaces.
Mm-hmm. Like, did you go to Golden Guy? I mean, that's in
Golden
Tokyo.
Guy's in Shinjuku. I've been there before. We don't know honeymoon. We've tended to stay a little bit farther out because Golden Eye, the last couple times we've been there, it's been like 99% Australians.
they do have a way of getting around, don't they?
I love a good Aussie, but we're mostly there to have our own fun experience and to like chat with locals. So we go to places where locals go, which is not Golden Guy.
Good point.
And then they're like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And then we invite people around and chat with them in Japanese, and it works.
You're fluent?
My wife is. I'm conversational.
Okay, wow. I mean, that's excellent. Okay. Oh, wisdom tooth surgery. Damn. Okay. Oh, that's my fan. It's like, why does my computer sound like it's about to lift off? Okay. Close email. All right. Turn the desktop on. All right. Can everyone hear me on the live stream? I know I've had some issues with the mic in the past. Check. Sweet. All right. Cool. So apologies for the late start. I had to go get a snack. I was desperately hungry, but now I'm all ready to go. So today we're going to put everything together and look at a few case studies of some of my own tracks. Again, for copyright reasons, we're using my own music. But we're going to look at how to put together all the different songwriting elements we've talked about so far. It's been a little bit maybe fragmented thus far, but now we're going to put the whole picture together, and I'm going to try to convey how one would go about putting together like a full-fledged song, a full-fledged EDM track. But before we do that, let's look at any homework submissions people have. So I see one from Cameron. I see Cadam's got one. That's great. Oh wait, I need to plug my audio into the big speakers so we can go off. Anmol's got one. Excellent. Oh man, we got a lot of homework today. This is great. All right, let me plug into the big speaker here. No, I'm just gonna put them both into this one. Hopefully this works. Okay, here's sound, so that's good. Okay. I don't think I've heard from. Oh wait, I don't know how to question. I want to ask a question about the summer, but it's more hyper-pop electronic. Vocal chopping or time stretching during the next few classes. Okay. Also was curious about how to go about sound design, especially creating different textures in Ableton. Okay. Yeah, I could potentially do something with that. Well, we can definitely talk about time stretching in the follow-up session. But let me see what I can put together on vocal chopping. Like if you can envelope, you can give me like an example song, so I can, yeah, just get a sense of what kind of vocal chopping you're looking for. And you also asked about creating different textures in Ableton. So talking about like background sounds, like ambient sort of, yeah, textures that we would put in the background of our track to give it some flavor, or you know, feel free to add any color onto what you mean by textures. But we can talk about, yeah, in the next session we could talk about, you know, doing some sound design for background textures if that's what you're looking for. Cool. So we got a submission from Kadam. We got one from Cameron. Let's start with Kadam. Why not? Cool. All right. Let me make sure that let me make sure y'all can hear on the live stream. Turn this down.
A signal.
Oops. Okay. Hold on. Let me fix my driver real quick because it's not desktop audio is not working here. 1 second. Properties. I won't use default. Let's use this one. I think this should work. Okay. Good. Kadam, is that choppiness there?
That's intentional.
That's intentional. Okay, great. It's sometimes hard to tell. Like when the audio driver is having some issues, sometimes it can sound like that. But
it was bad before, and I think it is correct now.
okay, excellent. All right. What? Oh, all good. Did anyone else get an ad? Oh. Oh, I didn't realize it was going to do that. I recently hit 100,000 subs, so now I can fully monetize my channel. Apologies for that. Oh, delay ads, insert ads, delay ads? I clicked the delay ads button just now, so hopefully that pauses that. Chica asks, is there an easy way to jump back to the live stream? Can you, are you able to fast forward? Oh, that's cool. I didn't know about that. Great tip, Kadam. I wonder if I can just turn off ads on YouTube live stream. Let's see. Let me see if I can do that real quick, because I don't want y'all to be. Y'all already paid for the class, so I feel like y'all should get the ad-free experience. Let's see. Y'all can see some behind-the-scenes stuff here. How do I turn these off? Watch paids out? Okay. All right. I don't want to waste too much time trying to figure this out, so I'll just try to keep remembering to click this pause ads button, so y'all don't get ads. But all right, let's listen to Kadam's track.
A signal. Interference. Delay. Resonance. Decay. Interference. It doesn't solve the problem. You are already generating the signal. You are perfect, just the way you are.
Very nice. Great work. Yeah, right off the bat, I love that like textured synth that you had, with the chords. And I loved how you kind of like turned it into a lead element almost. You're doing lots of filter automations on it, and then you brought in like the volume automation to make it flutter. Did you free draw those automations, or how are you getting those?
The automations were free drawn. That was with a little synth that I borrowed from someone, a little Rollins, and
Okay.
you probably get on.
Nice.
But I played the sort of pad sounds in and did a little bit with the dials on it, but then I did a lot more automation, and all of like the LFO and stuff was automation.
Nice. Yeah, you can. One thing you can do in Ableton is record automations directly. You can arm the track for recording and then twiddle the knobs with your mouse or with a piece of hardware that you have. I can show that once I get into Ableton. So yeah, great texture there. I love what you're doing with the hi-hats too, right? You weren't just keeping it like a consistent sort of beat, but you were playing a lot with like the specific rhythm and adding some like cool glitchy delays. I think you could have pushed that even further, or maybe added some like other sort of like quasi psychedelic percussion or glitchy sort of sounds in the background, because I was getting kind of like spaceship science fiction-y vibes. Where'd the vocal come from?
The vocal was a sample of a friend's performance at the Museum of Moving Image last weekend.
Oh, nice.
So I have not cleared with her whether I should continue using it, but I couldn't not try because I loved the tone of it.
Okay, did you just like hold your phone up?
Yeah, just voice recording.
Nice. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to use the recorder on their phone while they're out and about, and just like if you hear an interesting sound, record it. I mean, heck, even if you take a video of it, then you can also use that potentially in like a social media post, like remix. What other comments do we have here? Sanshin samples. Okay. Yeah, what was that kind of like plucked guitar-like instrument? Is that a Sanshin?
No, that was from the string synth on an OP one that I borrowed. I've just been like rifling through all of my friends' kit over the past week.
Nice. Yeah, friends let friends borrow synth, or just give them away. Like I know you and Cameron met up to do a little gear swap, which warms my teacher's heart. Okay, so it wasn't like a specific sampled instrument. It was just some kind of guitar-themed pluck.
Yeah, it's like it has a sort of string instrument synthesizer tool, and then you can manipulate the sound to bring it more into more like a shamisen or sanshin type sound, or more like a guitar. And that was just one of the presets that I lightly tweaked and then plucked out a keyboard with that felt good.
Nice. Okay, so you didn't like take the MIDI from somewhere. You like played it in yourself.
No, I just played it. This was all recorded as audio clips into Ableton.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Nice. Did you like quantize the playing at all, or just kind of went for it?
Just dragging the warp points around a little bit.
Ah, nice. Okay. Yeah, that can sometimes give you a more like organic sound than like hard quantizing the MIDI. you can add some subtleties, subtle variations when you're manipulating the audio directly like that. Did you use the scale effect at all to make sure you didn't hit any wrong notes, or did you good enough on the keys to be able to?
No, I'm not good enough on the keys. I figured out what. I honestly just trusted my ear.
Okay.
I don't know what key this song is in.
There you go. Well, I mean, it sounded fine to me. So, another example of how the ear is the final arbiter. No matter what your eyes or the theory says, if it sounds good, it is good. Let's see, what else did I notice? I liked the kick sample that you used. It was nice and kind of subdued. But then there was one part later where it seemed to intensify a bit in like a really exciting way. I don't know if that's just because some of the other elements dropped out and the kick could come through more.
I think that must be it, because the kick is the only thing that has no automation until the very end when I filter sweep it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my questions about it would be, I like the string sounds, but I don't think it necessarily is what I was looking for. Like, I wasn't sure. I got all the rest of the elements done, and then I wanted like some other melodic line or counterpoint melody, but I wasn't sure. Like, I like the idea of going in like a more psychedelic direction. I wasn't really sure what type of instrument or like how complex a melody to be reaching for.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Sure. Well, I thought what you had was like a nice contrast to the opening lead pad kind of sound idea, which was more textural, and we're like modulating through the textures, and then you contrasted that with like a kind of more notes based melody that was more plucky and like more staccato. So I think that general idea is a good one. One thing you could try is adding some like reverse delay on the plucked sound to give it a more psychedelic ambience. So you would reverse the whole thing, apply the delay effect, render it, and then reverse that. And so you'll get these kind of like whoop, whoop kind of sounds that that match up with how you played it. Does that make sense? I think there's some Beatles songs where they do this too with reverb.
Like the sort of spidery sounds at the beginning are a reversed delay, but I didn't think to delay, reverse, and then delay again. That's a cool trick.
Reverse, delay, and then reverse.
Yeah, sorry.
So I think that would be cool to make especially if it's like if you remember Chris Hetfield recording Space Oddity, he had his guitar in space, kind of with the reversed psychedelic delay, but like a traditional folksy acoustic instrument, it would, I think, kind of create a really interesting contrast, like lone spaceman on an abandoned ship, just playing to himself or playing to the computer. But I think if I was your friend and you remixed my spoken word performance, I would be thrilled. So
I hope she'd be cool with it. It was a very cool performance.
Mm-hmm. Was there like a video that went along with it?
There was a visual aspect, and then she was sort of performing, and then there was actually also a live dancer.
Nice.
So there was a lot going on.
Okay. So really we needed some psychedelic space underscoring to tie the whole thing together, perhaps. Let's see, what else? Bass was good. The like sub bass you had going on was good. Nothing too crazy, but enough to give it some nice throb. I'm not sure what I only have it plugged into one speaker, so if you did anything with the panning, I might have missed that. But that would be a nice element to play with too, to create more like psychedelic mind-bending atmosphere.
I think the vocal samples offset like 10% to the left or something, but that's about it.
Oh yeah, I guess, does your phone record in stereo? If it does, and you really just want that one channel, what you can do is put a utility on it and then tell it to only serve the left channel or whatever, and then it'll be nice and down the middle. Any commentary from other folks? We can run it back one more time just to see if we pick up anything else. So let's run it back one more time, and then we'll get into Cameron's track.
A signal. Interference. Delay. Resonance. Decay. Interference. Delay. Resonance. Decay. Interference. Decay. Resonance. Delay. It is more than signal, more than noise. Each pebble is now an input, a change, a fluctuation, an unwitting programmer of your own oracle, leaving behind fingerprints, maps of your behavior drawn in flexion and tension. It doesn't solve the problem. You are already generating the signal. You are perfect, just the way you are.
Nice. Yeah, a couple more things I thought of. I think with the vocal, you have a lot of opportunity to add like more glitchy kind of trippy effects, like some reverse reverb to like make it sound like her, voice is rushing in. You could also do some like vocal chops, like take little snippets and like copy and paste them a whole bunch. Maybe at one point you could put like a radio EQ on, so basically like that would be basically like a bandpass filter. So cut out the lows and the highs so it sounds like it's coming through like an intercom or something. You also might want to boost the highs on the vocal a little bit just so it has a little bit more clarity. So we can maybe hear a little bit better what she's saying. But I think the level is good given that it's the focal point.
Yeah, that's what to do with like effects to make the vocal tie in better was my main remaining question.
Make it tie in better. Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of putting the OTT multiband compressor on. For this, you don't need to go too extreme, just enough to kind of tame the sound and brighten it up, flatten it out a little bit, make it a little bit more controlled. Set it to like 10, 20, maybe 30%, and then maybe give the highs a little boost. That'll kind of make it come through a little bit more. I think you probably could have added some more delay and reverb to just give it more atmosphere. I mean, you don't want to overdo it because then it will get really muddy. But you could use a little side chaining, side chain the dry vocal to the ambient tail to so her words still come through clearly.
The ambient tail?
So I think I showed this with the kick, or maybe I don't know if I did this, but you take your vocal track and you add, say, like a reverb and delay, then you group them, and then you create a new chain. I can show this directly in Ableton. I don't want to open it up yet in case it messes up my audio drivers, but you'd have basically a dry chain where it's just her voice, no effects, and then you have a wet chain with the delay and reverb on it, and then you put a compressor at the end of the delay and reverb chain and set its sidechain input to be the drive vocal. And that way, whenever she's saying something, it'll move the delay and reverb out of the way, and then when she's done talking, it'll the delay and reverb will fill in the space. And that way you can get that clarity, but still have a nice ambient tail to kind of fill in the gaps. And I'll show how to set that up once we load up Ableton. Another thing I heard. I think you could bring up the volume of the little plucky sound, but maybe even better, you could add a phaser to it. It sounded like there might have been a phaser effect on it already, but I think that would kind of really give it some of that like 70s psychedelic space opera kind of sizzle, and would give it a little bit more character. So that's something I heard. What else? Oh yeah, I liked how you pulled the kick out and then started doing the volume LFO automation. I think that was a good time to bring down the energy in one part, but then add a new element, the fluttering kind of sound. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the main content of today's session, about how to keep some things the same but change other things so it sounds coherent but it evolves. Let's see. Maybe last one. Anything to do different in vocal sample processing tight and better? Yeah, I think we talked about that. Let's see. Anything in the Chan? Okay, no. But yeah, overall I think that's a nice little piece of work you got going on. So good stuff. All right, let's listen to Cameron's track. Let's see. Started by trying to recreate The Difference by Flume / Toro y Moi. Haven't heard that song. I'll have to look it up after. Tried to let it take its own identity. Excellent. Yeah, it's always nice to get inspired by a track, but not just copy it, but take some inspiration from it. Clean it up. Don't love the synth for the lead line. Okay, so we'll listen. We'll look at that. Also interested in going a bit deeper into melody composition, workflows that are intuitive for you, rules of thumb. Okay. Workflows that are intuitive for you. I guess you mean like some processes I do really quickly to get a result. Maybe if you can, I don't know, expand more on that. I can try to add. I can try to speak to that. Let's see. What else was I gonna say? Just quick random idea. If you are trying to come up with an idea for a melody or a drum loop or a rhythmic pattern or something, and you've got a song in mind that's really inspiring, one thing you can try is put the song in your headphones and then set your project tempo to be whatever the tempo is for the song, and then record with your voice through your microphone, whatever comes to mind. I think we have a lot of inbuilt ability to just kind of make approximately correct sounds with our mouths or whistling or humming or whatever, and then once you got that in Ableton, you can figure out the notes or the specific rhythmic patterns and then translate that into drums or melody, and that way you're not just copying the melody from a different song, but you're using it as inspiration. And it can often be a lot easier to improvise something if you already have some background going on. So give that a shot, especially with melody composition. If there's a song with a nice chord progression you like, maybe try recording yourself humming or whistling over it, in an intuitive way, and then record that in Ableton, and then go back and figure out the exact notes. There's actually, Ableton does have a function that will automatically transcribe audio into notes if it's one note at a time, or monophonic audio. So I can show that too once we get into Ableton. But all right, let's listen to Senses. Push more efficiently. Oh, you got an ad. Sorry. Let me. Sorry about that. I reset the ad timer. Well, I guess this now makes the makes the in-person offering a little bit more valuable. But thanks for bearing with me, y'all. It has kind of an exciting milestone for me to have hit 1,000 subscribers, but I'll try not to let it go to my head. All right, here we go. And I'll, for next week, I'll try to turn off the ads for live streams. Nice. I love that cute little ending where you just have it be the like wah wah sort of chords. That was a nice way to wrap things up. First thing I noticed was I like the like volume dynamics you had going on with the snare, right? You had like dun tsh, dun tsh, dun tsh, dun tsh. Definitely, the way a real drummer would play it, adding a little bit more emphasis on that first snare hit to give it some groove. I'm hearing the flume influence in that high lead up there, and I think I know you want some tips on writing melodies and such, but I think this one's pretty simple but effective. And in EDM you often don't need to necessarily go for a super complex melody. This one I feel like was very memorable, sing-alongable, would get stuck in your head afterwards. Like you can remember it. You had like a nice little variation in there too. I guess you might try adding some portamento to give it a little bit of slide. That could be one way to tweak it. I liked how you kind of picked up the energy at some parts. I think around here, which was nice. You had some good moments where you pulled back and then stepped back in with more energy. That was really nice. I liked you had like that nice saw background pad synth, and then you kind of mixed it up a bit with the filter automation version on it. Was that the same sound but with a filter on it, or did you is that a totally different patch? Aaron, you're listening at 1.5x. That's funny. Helping assess whether a track is too crowded or not to listen to it at different speeds. Same synth filter, nice. Yeah, it's always great when you can, reuse the same synth but apply some different effects to it. It helps create some consistency and maybe like a sense of complexity too. Like, ooh, this synth can do, it can do it all. It's a Swiss Army knife. Can you show how to slide? Yeah. If you're using Vital, you turn the voices down to 1, and then I'll show you once we load up Ableton, but I'll show that. To Aaron's point about it maybe feeling a little crowded, I think there were some parts in here where I think your bass was, I don't know if you had multiple bass patches going, but it did feel a little bass heavy. I did kind of like how you had that more electric kind of rock style bass come in. But it did feel like you were fighting for headroom a little bit, or trying to do a lot in the bass register down here. Maybe some side chaining could help. I would probably have to look at your project to properly diagnose it. But if you have two elements that are both trying to do different or even mostly the same things, and especially in the bass register, it can start to sound muddy and chaotic. So you might have had too many low notes in your pad, and the bass the bass is kind of tripping over those. We'll take a second listen here in a bit. Let's see. I also thought maybe you could later in the track you bring in some hi-hats for some of that high frequency energy. I thought that was good. I think you could have even done that earlier. there's a lot of indie rock songs where they bring in the kind of drum beat, and I was because it's a kind of Flume inspired. I think they do draw from indie rock inspiration as well. So I guess the song that always comes to my mind for that is "Breaking My Back Just to Hear Your Name." Somebody told me, right? In the chorus for that song, they have the rock version of the on the hi-hat. So I think that could be effective here. Another idea is to add more kick drum hits. So maybe take some inspiration from drum and bass or rock music and add some more kick drum hits to your beat to give it a more urgent sort of feel when you're picking up the pace in these more intense sections. That could be another option for you. No side chaining. It's a it's a killer. For me, when there's not enough side chaining in the bass, it just feels like the bass is kind of sitting there, really kind of weighing everything down, pushing. But as soon as you add just the right amount of side chaining, you get that groove kind of sound. So let's see. Let's run it back. Actually, maybe Cameron, you can also comment how did you come up with the melody? Were you just fiddling around, typing in notes? Drop a comment. But let's listen to this again. Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely hearing that the sort of sustained bass sound you have near the beginning. I think if you just sidechain that to the kick, that'll clean things up a bit. I know you did it to the pad sound, so that was good to give it some rhythm. Let's see what else. Oh, and I did hear when you added some hi-hats here around the middle. I think you just bring up the volume on those so they have just more energy. I think that would help. Yeah, definitely agree with Chica's point about it being like a indie rom-com, especially like with those like fast kick drum hits kind of around here. I was definitely getting like indie electro rock concert, maybe in Bushwick. Let's see. Oh, I think another element that could keep pushing the intensity further is in this like last section. I think like a nice arpeggiated line, maybe some kind of bell sound, or something else, maybe like a piano, could help add some more interest and more intensity to. Oh yeah, MGMT. There we go. Definitely a good source of inspo for that. And I think too in the last section you had your chords kind of plucking like dun 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 dun. I think we maybe needed to emphasize that a little bit more, like make the volume come down more sharply so we can really feel that pulse a bit better. Wasn't sure if that's exactly what you're doing, but if you had like a dun 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 plus like an arpeggio going, I think that would really take this last bit over the top. What else? Oh, I think maybe you could have added a couple crash cymbals here and there to like emphasize certain impactful moments, like right here after like when you have the quick drum roll on the kick. I think bringing in a crash cymbal to start the next section would be a nice like moment of emphasis. Let's see. You might also play around with adding some more effects to your pad sound just to give it a little bit more motion. You might add like some subtle chorus, or flanger, or phaser. Just make it like a little less static. I like what you did with the filter later. That's awesome. What else to say? There is something about your snare that feels a little plasticky to me. I'm not sure if I can put my finger. I'm not sure. Maybe adding a little bit more reverb would help. Maybe. Maybe trying a different sample might make it sound a little bit more organic. I'm not exactly sure. Again, I like the dynamics that you added by having those extra, or by making like the second hits a little bit quieter. That's great. Maybe you could even add a few more ghost hits, like doing, to kind of like a jazz drummer might do. That could kind of give it like that playful sense of urgency. Let's see. I love how warm MGM synths and vocals are. It feels sunny but a little crisp. Yeah, I think the crispness is what I'm getting at with that, like adding some effects to your pad synth. Just to confirm, in the first Resonance tracks, the drums were made with a delay. Aaron, to your question, I think Kadam had delay on the hi-hats to give it some kind of like fluttery. I wouldn't put delay on anything. I wouldn't put it on like the kick or the snare. That's gonna make things too busy. But for like auxiliary percussion, hi-hats, random glitchy perks, those are great options to add delay onto. Sometimes, to Kadam, your point about sometimes sounds can seem excessively crisp in a digital environment because there's a lot of high end. So one quick thing you can try is just take an EQ or a low pass filter, roll off some of the top end, because the classic synths had a harder time creating those high frequency sounds. And actually, kind of a general property of physics is that higher frequency waves take more energy to produce at the same amplitude as a lower frequency wave. So in natural systems, the high frequencies tend to, roll off in how loud they are. So if your synth has too much high end, it starts to sound unnatural. Like, where's all that energy coming from? This is not an organic system. So it's kind of like the difference between pink noise and white noise. Like, white noise has a lot of energy in the high end. So it sounds nice and bright and whooshing and can be a good sound, but like pink noise is what we see more in organic systems, and it has this warmer kind of low pass filtered tone. So I would try, taking out, just subtly rolling off the highs if your synths sound a little too crisp and high fidelity. There's even an effect called redux, which kind of mimics old analog to digital converters that don't have as much resolution as modern stuff. And Cameron's point about the melody. I started with a pattern that I liked all in one note, then started scattering until I got something interesting. Okay, I mean, that's a nice kind of like stochastic approach, chaotic approach maybe. You could also do that with the arpeggiator. You could hold down a chord that's all the notes in the scale, and then set it to random, and then see what, and record the output of that and see what comes of that, so you can get some stochastically generated melodies that'll still be in the right key. Explaining how to write melodies, I admit, is kind of a growth area for me as a teacher, let's say, because like my approach is very intuitive. It's a lot of what I do is like I'll take a pop song and I'll try to play the melody on the piano by ear. And once you've heard enough melodies, you start to be able to generate them yourself, given some context. It's kind of like asking, how do you write a great sentence? Except we don't even have the forcing function of this has to mean something like a sentence would have. Maybe one other tip I can give there is if you have your chord progression, one way to start is make your melody be just composed of notes that are in the chord that you're currently on. And then once you've got that written down, play around with nudging some of them to like a nearby note. It's challenging to balance the synth being too tinny, but when I toned down the highs, it wasn't driving the song forward as well. That's fair. I mean, that's where like introducing a new element could come in handy. For instance, if you near the beginning you have your saw pad sound, maybe with a little bit less high end, and because that's at the beginning of the song, the listener won't have much else to compare it to. So it'll sound good to them. And then later, when you want to fill in that high end, you could add like a new arpeggiated bell synth or like a high plucky sort of sine wave sound to fill in those top end, and that'll glue together nicely with the pad, because you've rolled off the highs there, and then you have this new element to fill in the highs there, so it'll be kind of like glued together. Callum, that's also a good idea. Like bring in an oscillator an octave lower and just make it a little bit quieter, but and maybe even for the pad sound you'd want to high pass it anyway, because you have that bass to fill in the low register. So, but you can still take advantage of the extra like beef that the lower notes, or that the lower oscillator adds into it. You don't want to overdo it, because sometimes it can, like, even if you do high pass it, if you have like too many low notes in your pad and high notes, it'll start to kind of sound mushy. One way to get around that is to basically take out the third. So like maybe your chord has 3 notes in it, like an F minor chord, and then down an octave just have the F and the C, the root and the fifth. And that way you get more power in the low end, but without the blurriness of that extra third. You can just leave the third for the upper registered. Fair. Don't want to rely too much on one element necessarily. You also when you have ARPs, you don't necessarily need to keep them going constantly. You could be like da 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 da. You know, you could like leave some space, so it's not going constantly, and then you'd have some room to grow if you want to build it up further and like add more arpeggiated notes. So, all right, let me reset the add counter here. Okay. Cool. Let's see. All right, I guess now we can, let's see, any other homework submissions? Okay. Anwal, you submitted this, Odessa song. I'll listen to this after class, and I'll come up with some vocal chopping ideas based on that. Cool. All right, let's get into Ableton. And let's see. I know I was going to show how to turn on the glide or the portamento for lead sounds. I'll show that in Vital. Let's see. What else was I gonna show? Oh yeah, I'll show how to side chain some ambience again to like a vocal sample, so you get that clarity.
Slide and Vital, transcribe monophonic melody into MIDI, reverse delay, and sidechain ambience were the things I written down.
Okay, I need to have you as my note taker. This is great. Okay, so quick Vital slide sound here. So what you're going to want to do is take this voices. I think you actually don't even necessarily need to do this, but for a lead sound, you want it to be one note at a time, monophonic. So take the voices down to 1, and then turn this glide up, this glide knob here. And then if you have always glide turned on, then every time you play a note, it'll slide around to the next one. If you have it turned off, then I believe it will only glide if you're holding one note and then you press the next note while still holding this first note, and then otherwise it won't glide. So that can give you like an easy control for maybe having some notes be glided between and then other notes not. So let me let's see, is that okay? That is coming through. Sorry about that. My bad. Let me bring down the level a little bit, but here, let me filter it too, so it's not as screaming. Okay, so I've got my voices set to 1, glide, whatever, set always glide on. Right, and then if I turn always glide off, I can go, right, and it's not gliding, but then when I hold 2 notes, so, yeah, but as long as you turn the glide up. Actually, I kind of want to see what happens if I have more than one voice on. Let's see. Oh, and let me turn always glide on. Okay. So if you turn on always glide and play like a pad kind of sound or a comping chord sort of sound, that can add some extra flavor to it, because the notes will always have a little bit of a pitch envelope to them. So not sure what octave, not sure exactly what legato does or octave scale, but turn this glide knob up and either turn on always glide or don't, and then set voices to 1 for a lead. Cool. So when drawing MIDI notes, do you need to have a bit of overlap to allow it to glide? If not, set to always glide. Yeah, that's correct. I think, let's see, if we have the release turned up, let's see if that also works. Okay, so it's about the note on. So yeah, you'll have to have the MIDI notes overlap a little bit if you want them to glide together. Yeah. Okay, so try that out for adding a little bit more interest to your lead sounds. Okay, now let's talk about creating some side-chained ambience. Actually, I'll do it on this lead sound because it also sounds really good on leads. So what I would do here is, so let's add a delay. Let's add a reverb. Okay, select them both and then press Ctrl-G to group them. Then open up the audio effect rack side panel here, and then right-click here and say Create Chain. So then by default, this will have, you know, nothing on it. And actually, if we're doing this with vocals, and I, you know, want to use OTT to kind of tame it a little bit, I'd put the OTT first. Maybe bring it down to like, you know, 20 or whatever to taste, depending on the vocal.
What is OTT for again, other than just magic?
It kind of is magic. So, I mean, the underlying effect is the multi-band compressor, which takes the incoming signal, splits it into a low, mid, and high band, and then lets you apply different compressor settings to each one. So it's like a normal compressor, but you have more control over how each band of frequencies is treated. The reason you would do this is because lower frequency notes take longer to play out than high frequency ones. So you might want the attack and decay settings for low frequencies to be longer to give it more time to kick in. Whereas for high frequency sounds, you want it to react more quickly. So you can get like a, you know, tighter control. But OTT is just like it's a nice preset that kind of gives, you'll notice here that the lows and the highs are both boosted by like 10, and the mids are only boosted by 5.7. So it gives it this happy face EQ by default, which sounds louder because of the way humans hear things. So this immediately gives you that like happy face EQ sound, and it smooths the volume differences out because of the compression. That's why it can sound kind of intense if you have it at 100, but if you dial it in, it can create like a more balanced overall sound and give it a little bit more presence in the mix. So yeah, so I would, so for a vocal, I'd put the OTT here, and then after grouping my delay and reverb together and adding this dry chain, now I will add a compressor at the end, right after the reverb, so just on the wet channel. Turn on the side chain, audio from, let's see, Vital, and I want well, it's just called chain, but if I name this to dry, then you can see that it's you know, dry. So now and bring the threshold down pretty low. Oh, another thing to point out here, this is kind of like using the send that we talked about before, where, you know, on each track you can send some of the signal to a dedicated reverb and delay effect. So for here, we'd want the reverb to be at 100%, so that, because, you know, we've got plenty of dry signal on the dry side of things, and we want our wet channel to be, well, wet. So there's no sense in having the reverb at anything other than 100. In fact, if you look at the send over here, you know, the reverb's set to 100, the delay is set to 100% wet. And yeah. Oh, it looks like I need to bring it down even more. And maybe I'll turn up the feedback, bring this down, bring up the decay. I'm gonna also turn up get a little bit more high frequency in the sound. So now the melody comes out clear, like no matter how many crazy notes I play. And then the reverb waits in the wings and then whooshes in nicely. Actually, let me turn down the release here so it's even more obvious. So yeah, this can give you some really nice, like, big trancy lead kind of ambient sounds, especially if I turn on the unison. Yeah, so give that a shot. I'd probably also put the delay on ping pong mode just so like the lead is kind of right down the center, and then the ambient effects kind of come in on either side. So, yeah. Let's see. Chica, since I think you're on Live Light, you might not have multiband compressor, but you can get it from Xfer Records. So this is a free, and this is what that preset is based on. So, funny, it's offered through Splice, but let's see if I can find it on their actual website. I guess, OTT is on here somewhere. So you can get OTT for free there, and then just install it. Cool. And then, right, we want to look at transcribing melodies. So I'll just I'll show an example here with the lead sound. So let me turn off all this. Turn off the ambience because it'll make it harder. But okay, so we'll render this to audio, freeze and flatten. Okay, so we got this. Interesting how biased it is upwards. But now if we have this, so we have our monophonic audio. Now if we right click, we can say convert melody to new MIDI track. Now we got the notes back. Now we can plug it into, I guess it's what is it by default? Yeah. So if you wanted to, make up your own melody, you could, use your microphone, arm the audio track for recording, hum into it, and then use this convert melody to new MIDI track. And I guess these days it can also do harmony. Polyphonic automated polyphonic audio transcription has been a very difficult problem in computer science for a long time, but I guess Ableton's cracked it somehow. And you can do it with drums too. Actually, I'm kind of curious as to how it will transcribe this as drums. This could be a fun sound design strategy. Yeah, who knows where this is coming from? But actually, let's take a drum loop. Let's see how Ableton handles this. It's at 150, so we'll put our tempo at 150. Now we'll say slice, convert drums to new MIDI track. And then let's see how we did. Okay, pretty close. Might need to do a little bit of quantization here. I mean, it even gets some of the volumes right too. So So yeah, you could like probably drum on a table or, you know, beatbox. But yeah, so those are a couple tools that Ableton has for quickly getting your, you know, whatever random sounds you want converted into MIDI notes, so then you can plug them into whatever synth you want or whatever, you know, drum kit you want, and that can be a really helpful. I don't want to say crutch, but like a tool for getting the music that's in your body into Ableton. All right, what was the fourth thing?
Let's see. Monophonic melody, slide, functionalities, and reverse delay.
Oh, reverse delay, yes. Okay, so let's go back to our let's just like play something in Vital. So I'm gonna do like a cool sine wave melody. So record this in. Yeah, something like that, whatever. So we'll render this, freeze and flatten. And then Shift R to reverse it. Right, okay, so we get that whoop, whoop, whoop kind of sound. Now we'll put the delay on it. And maybe I'll turn the dry wet down a little bit. Freeze and flatten that. And then join these together, reverse the whole thing.
What's the command to join clips?
Oh, Control J. And now we get. Maybe you want to add a touch of reverb afterwards just to. Just so it's not like dun. And if I let me copy this, let me go all the way back to the beginning. We should be able to line this up with our original. Is this it? There we go. Yeah, so you can see how like the original notes. Oh wait, but I reversed this, so I got to reverse it back. All right, so it'd probably be something like this. But in any case, you can get the original melody in the place that it already was, where it was, but with the extra like delay fade-ins, you know, filling in some of the gaps.
Is it possible to render out just the effects on the channel as their own audio?
Well, let's see. You could use resampling. The thing with freeze and flatten is that it, prints the whole track. So, let's see. I have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure. It sounds like a ringtone. Freeze and flatten effects, Ableton. Only the effects. Only freezing the current channel, nothing from the sends. Okay, yeah, I think to just tease out the effects, you'd have to resample. But you saw what I did there too, where I like freezed and flattened, did all the additional processing, and then I copied the clip, and then I undid everything to get back to where I was at the beginning, and then I pasted in that clip. So you can do it that way. So you'll end up back where you started, but with that extra, with the extra audio processing that you've done. Cool. All right, I think that covers all the. Stuff that came up. You know, if there are other things you want me to touch on, you know, put them in the channel. For next week, I'll come up with something for vocal chopping. But for today, I want to talk about I guess you'd call it overall song structure, songwriting, how to take like an idea and turn it into a whole track, and we'll do that by looking at a couple of my tracks. So for the first example, we'll do my song Rockstar. Let me see if I have let me make an MP3 of it real quick because it's like 40 megabytes otherwise. Let's see, open file location. Let me get ChatGPT to tell me how to convert WAV to MP3. Okay, great. Let's see, open. Oops. Command. Let's go there. All right, and we'll say and then I want go. Okay, I need to put it in quotes. And then do the rest of it here. Okay, so this will let y'all follow along at home. I'll put this in the Discord. All right, so this track is at 140 if I remember correctly. So if you want to follow along, open up Ableton and set your project tempo to 140 and then drag the track in. Oh, let me make sure. Let me reset our ad counter here. Okay. And then let's set this to 140. Oops. Here. There we go. Okay. Yep. It is at 140. Okay. So, the way I'll do this is I'll play like eight or so measures, and then I'll talk about the 8 or so measures. I'll play them, and then talk about them a little bit more. Or maybe I'll play them, talk about them, and then play them so you can hear what I mentioned. And we'll also be, let me have the EQ up here too, so you can kind of see the frequency spectrum of what's happening, because I think that's also kind of informative. But all right, I'm also going to annotate the track as we go, and part of your homework will be to take a track, or a few tracks that you love, bring them into Ableton, or let's just say take one track that you love, bring it into Ableton, annotate all the different sections, intro, build up, drop, break, annotate them all, and then depending on how much time you have, sketch out your own track that follows the same kind of song structure as your inspiration track. So, and if you want to annotate different key points in your track, you go up to this top bar here, you right click, and you say add locator. So my song starts with an intro, naturally, so I'll put an intro right at the beginning. So the story behind this track is that I'm sampling a part of an interview that Lady Gaga gave. So this is kind of like the main idea of the track. And From a songwriting perspective, or even from like a music production perspective, the way I like to think about it is that it's kind of like the way that radio works, right? Either FM radio or AM radio. You have a carrier wave that's at like a certain frequency, right? And then you encode the song or the information, whatever's being broadcast over radio in modulations of that wave. So for AM radio, you modulate the volume, and then for FM radio, you modulate the frequency of the wave. So what we're doing when we're writing a song is our carrier wave is, EDM, the genre of EDM, or maybe more generally music. Or if you were, say, making a movie, the genre of film, or the medium of film would be your wave. And then the message you're trying to encode is your main idea, your thesis, your song. So you could take that idea and you could project it in many different media, right? Like I could take this song and make a movie out of it. I could take this song and write a book about it. In each case, the main idea is the thing that's causing, I guess you can call it ripples in the medium that's being used to transmit the idea. Maybe that sounds a little theoretical, but what I want to emphasize here is this idea that, if you have a main idea, a theme, a thesis, and you kind of like build your whole song around pushing that idea forward, I think that tends to be an effective approach to songwriting because it creates, it makes your overall song like really coherent, right? It's like about one thing. There's that Bruce Lee quote that's like, I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks one time, but one kick 10,000 times. That's kind of how I like to approach songwriting. Like, how can I take my main idea and show it in 1,000 different perspectives or present it 1,000 different ways so that by the end of it, it's like really sunk into the listener's head. So for our intro, we're just getting started here. We're establishing kind of like the baseline tonality. We're gonna have just a couple elements, some bass, some arpeggios, just to kind of set the stage. If this were a movie, you might imagine like an opening shot that just establishes like, hey, we're in New York, or hey, we're in the jungle, or whatever. That's kind of what I'm doing here with the intro. And then you'll hear Lady Gaga start speaking, and that also kind of helps establish the storyline, right? I'm not chopping up the vocal too much yet. I'm just presenting it more or less as is so that the listener is kind of oriented, and then from there we can begin our like descent into madness. So let me play this intro section, and feel free to post in the Discord or the chat if you have any questions. And Chica, I started a new blank project and just loaded my track in. So yeah, here we go. I'll just play the intro here.
You see, if I was a guy and I was sitting here with a cigarette in my hand, grabbing my crotch and talking about how I make music because I love fast cars and fucking girls, you'd call me a rock star. But when I do it in my music and in my videos, because I'm a female, because I make pop music, you are judgmental and you say that it is distracting. I'm just a rock star.
Okay, so like I said, I introduced this bass riff, and I have that kind of arpeggio melody in the background. There's that kind of magical downer sound at the beginning to give it some kind of like, swirling ambience. I kind of like to think of it as, striking a match in the darkness to kind of illuminate the scene, what's going on. Anmol, to your question about, one of your questions about like texture and sound design, I have this, there's a layer in the background. It's like a radio static layer. It's kind of subtle. When I play it again, listen closely for it, but I have that going in the background along with some, it's got some like flanger effect on it. And that helps kind of glue everything together, create more texture, contextualize the bass and the arpeggio sound. And Lady Gaga's voice kind of helps fill in some of the gaps. And then, Lady Gaga's speech, she just more or less talks through it, but I use some reverse reverb, like especially here at the beginning, like leading into how she's going to talk. That kind of creates some anticipation in the listener. And then here about 8 bars through, I have another little subtle reverse reverb of her voice. That can be a really effective way to fill in some gaps when you have a vocal. Just like take little snippets, use the reverse reverb technique to fill in the gaps. And then near the end here, I fade everything else out except her voice, and then lone voice by herself saying, "I'm just a rock star." And so that kind of, as you'll hear in a second when we go into the build up, that kind of helps set the stage. And the song's called Rockstar, so I'm really going to be pushing on this rockstar idea the whole way through. And now that I've laid out some of the like main thematic material and oriented the listener, later I can start chopping it up and recontextualizing it, creating a sort of abstract story about it, but it will be based around elements that the listener's already familiar with, so it won't be like coming out of nowhere. So I'll play it again, and this time I'll start going into the build-up. Snip this, move it over, and then we'll talk about the build-up a little bit. All right, here we go. And Aaron, to your question, the ARP, that's actually it's from a loop that we got on Splice. By the way, I made this track with one of my students from my very first class, so special place in my heart. Can you show what kind of synth you used? I can't show what synth I used because it was a loop that we got from Splice, using loops isn't cheating. In fact, if I was trying to make a song really, and we'll talk. Actually, next week we'll use some loops, and I'll show how to incorporate those into our songwriting. But yeah, let's keep moving in the interest of time. So here we go.
You see, if I was a guy and I was sitting here with a cigarette in my hand, grabbing my crotch and talking about how I make music because I love fast cars and fucking girls, you'd call me a rock star. But when I do it in my music and in my videos, because I'm a female, because I make pop music, you are judgmental and you say that it is distracting. I'm just a rock star. I'm just a rock star.
Okay. Maybe one other thing to mention about the intro is I put some delay on Lady Gaga's voice. Obviously not in the original interview, but I put it there to give it kind of a more epic kind of scope. All right, so some things to point out about this build-up. At the beginning, I use that same downer sound from the intro, but now because I have the kick going and I have it sidechained, it creates like some rhythm to it. So Andrew Hong, he's a YouTuber that makes a lot of music production videos. He talks about like one way to create progression in your songs is to keep something the same but change something else. So here I'm keeping that same sound to give it some consistency, but I'm now adding in the side chaining to give it that like rhythmic pulse. Okay, so then when the kick comes in, I kind of want it, so this song is going to be like a 4 on the floor, kind of, I guess you'd call it trance or dream house maybe, dream trance. So it's going to have a 4 on the floor beat. So I'm kind of foreshadowing that, but also using the kick as a build-up element. So I start with it with a low pass filter on it, and I gradually open it up so it gets brighter over time. You'll be able to hear that. And then I do this, I do the thing where it's playing quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, and then it speeds up to eighth notes, and then it speeds up again to 16th notes. And then at the end, I high pass the kick and the snare away to kind of get them out of the way. And then I have Lady Gaga say, "I'm just a rock star," again, like right before the drop, which we'll see in a second. So yeah, I'm using that "I'm just a rock star" as like, again, this element. I'm reminding the listener, this is what we're talking about. This is what's going to stick in their head afterwards. And then the other key thematic material I bring in here is this piano melody, right? So I still have the same bass line going from the beginning. I still have the same like background arpeggio, but now I've added in this piano melody. And when you have a main theme, which in this case is Lady Gaga's speech, it's nice to have a contrasting counter melody, or in sitcoms you have like an A plot and a B plot, and they kind of weave those two together. They provide a nice contrast. Like in the 90s, you would often get like a female diva vocalist singing like the chorus, and then you'd have like some dude rapping as the contrasting element. So here, having a voice contrasted with an instrument like a piano is a good like duality to play against each other. And as we'll hear later in the track, I'll start weaving those two together. Oh, Chica, I love your words are so kind. Thank you. It's on my Spotify, so check it out. Cool. So that's enough about the build-up. Let's let me annotate that as well. So build-up, and then so now we'll get into the first drop. I think that ends about here. Well, I'll just press pause when it's time. So yeah, here in the drop, you're gonna hear. I'll just play it for you, starting from the build-up. Here we go.
I'm just a rock star. I make music.
All right. Sorry, one more thing to point out about the build-up. You can probably see here how the waveform is getting like more squashed as we go down. So I'm literally bringing down the volume of the entire track, but I'm opening up the low-pass filter that's on the kick and the snare. So those elements are getting brighter, like you can hear them better, but they're also getting quieter. And that's so that when the drop hits, which is at max volume, it sounds like louder. Like the listener's not going to really notice consciously that technically things are getting quieter in the sense of the amplitude of the waveform. But then when the drop hits, it'll be extra intense. And I mean, it's kind of diabolical. You're literally just turning down the entire track. But this is an effective trick for making your build up into your drop, or making the drop much more impactful. Okay, so Lady Gaga says, "I'm just a rock star," and then we get into our drop. Now we're feeling it. We're feeling the vibe. We've got the piano melody going. I added an extra octave note up here, so it kind of intensifies the piano. Now that we're in the drop, let's add some more energy into it. Still got the same bass line, still got the same arpeggio in the background, but now I have this like pad sound playing some chords. And I know the song's in F major. I think the chords are F, C, B flat, C, D minor. So again, it's all diatonic. Like It's all chords that we looked at in the circle of fifths lesson. F, F, C, B flat, C, D minor, and then again. And then at the beginning, you know, I have a crash cymbal to emphasize, like, to add extra power to the beginning of the drop, like, hey, we're getting into it. You might have also heard this, like, kind of side-chained noise downer sound to give it more like, hey, we're releasing the tension from the buildup. That's kind of one of the ways that we use downers, just to or downer sounds, not downer pills. We use that to kind of release the tension that we've created here. So, and I also added, so it's just so drums wise, it's just the kick and that off eighth note hi-hat. So doomts, 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 doomts. You know, I don't add the clap in until 8 bars later. So this whole drop is 16 bars. So in the first 8, I've got, you know, the piano, the bass, the arpeggio, the kick, and the hi-hat going. And then for the second half, I want to intensify things. So I add the clap, you know, on the 2 and the 4. I add in some 16th note hi-hats to give it some more energy in the high end. I add this guitar sound that's playing the same chords, but it's compressed in with the pad sounds. So that gives it some extra, like, rhythmic motion, but it's still playing the same chords. So the listener gets to hear the melody again, but now it has kind of some more intensity behind it. And you'll hear that, like, you know, just like in class, I pulled out the kick drum for, like, a single measure here right before the turnaround, and I do a small fill with the claps. So that can be a nice way to introduce a new element. So, like, imagine a stage production, like a musical, or a ballet. Often a new character will come onto stage with a flourish. That's kind of what the clap's doing here. It enters by doing a little slight drum fill just to, you know, create that turnaround feel, and then it joins in with the chorus, you know, playing its role on the 2 and the 4. And then near the end here, we pull out the kick again, and you know, we gradually low pass away the hi-hats and the pad sounds, the background elements, and the drums, and we just leave the piano to kind of close things out, and then we're ready to go into our break, where, you know, we haven't heard Lady Gaga for 16 bars now, so it's time to bring her back. But we're gonna take little snippets of what she said and kind of like recontextualize it, so it's you know, still pushing on that same theme, but now we're isolating and magnifying the key parts of it that we want to really stick in the listener's head. Cool. So I'll go from the drop, and now we'll go into the break section. So I'm bringing the energy down. You'll hear the kick drum kind of have a low pass filter on it, so it's not quite as intense. Lady Gaga will start talking again, and you'll also hear that the chord progression changes slightly. It's still in the key of F, still just using, you know, basic diatonic harmony, but I want to change things up for the listener so it's not like all the same thing. So here we go.
I'm just a rock star. I make music because I love fast cars and fucking girls. Girls, 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 girls. I'm just a rock star. Rock star, rock star. Music, 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 music. Girls, girls, girls. Cars, rock star, rock star, rock star.
Okay. So you know, in this first, again, this section is 16 bars. Changed up the chord progression. I'm using that saw pad that I talked about a couple sessions ago. You know, real simple, just saw wave, a little bit of unison, and low pass filter to get rid of the highs, so it's kind of a more subdued sound, because you know we're pretty energetic here in the drops, so now we want to take a step back. So you know, we have part of Lady Gaga talking along with some delay to fill in the gaps, because you don't she doesn't necessarily need to be, you don't need to have the lead sound going constantly necessarily. You can you know, use effects, time-based effects like delay to fill in some of those gaps. I'm also not using the bass line from the beginning. Now we're just using a simple Reese bass sound, which I believe I talked about before. It's just like a bass sound. It's like a saw wave with the unison turned on, so it's like you know, kind of watery but powerful. So that plus the pad sound creates like a full spectrum sort of sound, full spectrum sort of harmonic context for Lady Gaga to talk over. Then when I want to intensify things, you know, after in the second half of this, I guess you'd call it a break section. Let me annotate that here. Then when I want to intensify things, I do two things. So I switch the bass to be this rolling bass line, you know, da 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 da. Side change of the kick, of course, because we want that clarity. But you know, so I'm going from like a long held bass note to a more plucky rolling bass sound, and that, you know, we perceive that as more energetic and like things are progressing. And then I also, in the drums, I add that ride cymbal on every quarter note. We haven't used that yet in our track, so that's kind of like something we're keeping in reserve. So now when we want to, you know, throw more fuel on the fire, we have that here to create some more intensity. And later we'll bring it back again when we need to go even more all out. So, and then as far as the vocal chopping goes, now I'm distilling Lady Gaga down even further. She's just saying music, girls, cars, rock star. Like, that's it. That's like the chant. That's the hypnotic repeating poem that we want to stick in listeners' mind, and it becomes its own thematic element. So, you know, we see this progression from like a long coherent speech to cutting out a couple key parts of her speech to then just like isolated elements of her speech. And this is what I like to describe as descent into madness. Like we're gradually getting less and less coherent, like more and more like out of our minds, but like in the world that the track is creating for us. So yeah. So and then you know, to create this build up going into the, I don't even know what to call this next section that's coming up, that's like, which you'll hear. But I'm gradually opening up the low pass filter on the kick. I'm gradually opening up the low pass filter on the saw wave pad, so it gets you know, brighter and brighter. And then you know, adding in the ride. Also, you might be able to hear near the end, I start pitching up the ride cymbal to give it some extra lift going into the, I guess you call this the rock star section. So yeah, let's hear what the next part sounds like.
I make music because I love fast cars and fucking girls. I'm just a rock star. Music. Girls. Cars. Rock star. I'm just a rock star.
Okay. So here I'm, in one way I'm going all out, right? I've got this super saw patch playing these big dramatic chords. And again, this is just that same simple unison saw pad, except I have the filter all the way open. I've got some white noise to make as a top layer to fill in the high end and give it extra like sizzle. I've got the bass, the Reese bass sound also with the filter all the way up, so my chords are like massive and full spectrum and filling out all the sound. Maybe you saw that on the EQ. We're playing the same chords as this break section, but now just things are maxed out, and the drums are pure drum fill, right? There's no like consistent beat to create the sense that things are moving forward. Instead, we get this sort of expansive opening up kind of sound, right? Like 4 on the floor beat, sounds good when you're cruising, but it can sound kind of like tight and constricted. So here I want to kind of like open things up, let the sunshine in, if you will. I've also been kind of building up the energy here. So now I've earned this opportunity to go all out with the synths and the drum fills. Those are the first one is from a sample pack. The others are, I programmed them myself. Just toms, snares, and kicks. So nothing fancy. I guess you could also call this like the Rockstar section, because it's kind of like, especially when that lead sound comes in, it's kind of like you could imagine someone playing this on the guitar. The lead that comes in halfway through that it's just another saw wave with the unison turned up. And I have an LFO set to modulate the pitch to get that sort of sound. Do you have a question?
That was my question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. How you get that sort of tremolo and wah.
Yeah, so I assigned an LFO to the pitch. Put LFO on the fine. In this case, I think I put it on the fine, so I don't want it to wobble too much, but probably need to turn it down. Yeah, and then if you turn this delay knob up, it'll wait a second before bringing it in. But one thing you do have to do, you need the pitch to start in the middle, like on its home note before starting the vibrato. Otherwise, it's going to sound like it's out of key. So you want this to be in the middle and make this kind of shape. I'm not sure why I can't quantize it to be in the middle, but Serum lets you do that. But this is basically the shape you'd want. So you can see how that comes in. And then, so in the first half of that section, it's chords, bass, drum fills. Then I want to intensify it even further, so I bring in this lead melody that on top of the same chords, slightly different drum fills, and it's like at an octave even higher, an octave above the chords, so it really like shines out on top. But I've compressed the chords and the lead together so that when the lead comes in, it doesn't start clipping, right? So I want the listener's gonna hear it because it's doing some interesting moving stuff, but I don't want it to clip, and I want things to still be loud. So I put the chords and the lead on the same channel, and then put a compressor on them so that they all they stay with it, they stay controlled. And that's the same thing I was doing with the pad sounds in the drop. Like when I bring that guitar in, it's compressed alongside the choir and the synth that I have going on, so they're all staying controlled and staying in their lane. Thanks, Chica. Let's see. The lead sound is the lead sound is just like one of these saw wave with some unison. You could probably, I think I might have put a second saw with an octave higher, like this. Oops, sorry, let me turn off the... Something like that. I would have to go back, or no, this should also be detuned, so something like this. Yeah, so it's really just like, you know, simple supersaw layers in an octave. Yeah, so then that section leads into the second build-up, and I want that to be more intense than the first one because now we're already deep in the track. So I start right away with the 16th note snares, and I'm gradually opening up a low-pass filter, so we start bringing in more of the highs. You'll also hear that it starts with that same magical downer sound from the beginning, which again helps create some consistency and coherency. I like to, you know, my sort of rule of thumb is that every sound should be used at least 2 or 3 times. You know, so it's not just some like random arbitrary sound you threw in your track for some reason because you had it, but it's like, you know, a conscious choice, and then it comes back like a recurring character or thematic element, helps create some consistency in the world. So, you know, kicking that second build off with the same downer from the beginning, making it more intense to start by just going straight to the 16th note snare rolls. And also now I just have Lady Gaga chanting Rockstar over and over and over again. So I'm really just, you know, pushing that Rockstar button. Like nothing, no need to bring in any other ideas. Like we're committed to it now. And then chord progression wise, this is like a subtle music theory detail. But for the first half of that second buildup, it's on B flat, which is the 4 chord. And then the second half is on the C chord, which is the 5 chord. And if you go from 5 to 1, in this case C to F, that's like the strongest chord movement you can make. So I'm kind of sort of setting that up for the drop. This is like a way to make the drop more intense by making this 5 to 1 chord change.
Why is it? Can you go over that one more time? Why that is specifically so powerful?
Yeah. Okay, so you know how like the circle fifths, you know, 4 to 1 is also very powerful. 5 to 1 is like the most powerful. So, in the harmonic series, you have the fundamental. The first harmonic is an octave up. The second harmonic is an octave and a fifth up. So, on a deep physical level, the fifth is like the closest interval to the fundamental. So you could say that the chords want to go from 5 to 1. There's like a strong tension there. If you keep going up, the fourth harmonic is again the octave, and then the fifth harmonic is the fourth. So that kind of justifies why this 4 to 1 motion would also be similarly strong, or why the 4 chord is so strong in a given key. Unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna have time to look at my other track where I just go between the 5 and the 1, and you can hear how potent that sounds. Maybe I'll link to a previous lesson where I did go over it, or a previous session of the class where I went over that one. You know, you can always ask ChatGPT or ask the internet, like, what's the 5 chord if I'm in the key of D, and it'll tell you. But just know that if you can only choose one chord, of course, you know, choose the chord of the key you're in. But if you can only choose a second chord, choose the fifth, because it's like the perfect complement. It's like the strongest cousin or brother or whatever of the home chord. Okay, let's keep it pushing. So we'll go from the build up into the second drop, and you know the second drop, like now we're kind of starting to wrap things up, but it's the second drop, so we can make things twice as long. Like the second drop is going to be 32 bars instead of 16. You know, we've really earned it, and it also starts with this characteristic kind of like fake out drop where you don't start the drop right away. we add some other elements here. There's going to be like a motorcycle revving, you know, very rock star. Again, I'm picking samples to emphasize this idea of rock star. And it has this the sound that I call a sub drop. It's like it sounds like boom, and that's another nice. I'm not sure I showed how to program that one. Maybe I can, or maybe I did. I forget. Might have supposed to have gotten to that in the build-up session, but maybe I'll show that real quick. But so yeah, so we're gonna get into the second drop, and it's you know, it gets to be twice as long and twice as intense. So here we go. Where does that second build-up start? Here.
I'm just a rock star.
So you heard the motorcycle revving and then the sub drop sound. You know, the piano melody starts right away. Again, the secondary theme that I want to start off with, and I take Lady Gaga's voice out because I'm trying to keep some things in reserve for the second half of the drop when I want to, you know, when it's the final hurrah and I want to go all out. So I have the piano melody playing. I have the, you know, it pretty much starts with all the elements from the second half of the first drop, you know, when things were pretty high intensity there. But I've also added the rolling bass line from the break section, so bringing that back in. But, you know, that also helps create this feeling of intensity. But I don't have the ride in yet. I don't have the clap in yet. But because we're deep into the track and we've like kind of earned the listener's commitment, we can, you know, we don't necessarily need to do a lot of different things. We can just give the listener like time to enjoy this world that we've created and this like high degree of intensity. And this is a common pattern in EDM tracks where the second drop is more intense than the first. So yeah, rolling bass line, plus all the intense energy from the second half of the first drop. You know, same piano melody. Then we get to the second half, and in the second half of the second drop, I start weaving together Lady Gaga chanting, you know, music, girls, car, rockstar, music, girls, car, rockstar, just over and over again. But that meshes nicely with the piano, like, so, you know, her talking, she's kind of talking in a very straight sort of rhythm, music, girls, cars, rockstar. The piano's doing something a little bit more off-grid. So there's a nice contrast there. The rolling bass line stays, but now I'm adding in some octave jumps to give it some more intensity. So, you know, progressing that element a little bit further. I add the claps in. Maybe you heard I had this little like turnaround kick roll about halfway through the first half of the second drop, followed by like a small crash cymbal, and then I use that same rhythmic pattern when the clap enters. So kind of the same playbook as in the first drop, just I've doubled the length of everything and added some slight variations. So, you know, I'm not like trying to come up with some crazy new fill. I'm just taking the existing idea and tweaking it a little bit, and that's like a way to kind of keep moving faster. Right, so then also to amplify the intensity in the second half of the drop, I also add that ride cymbal back in, you know, the one from the break. So now we've pretty much got all of our main percussion elements playing, and we've got Lady Gaga and the piano weaving together. And then for this last bit, I want the listener to be like kind of floating in the air, suspended a bit. So I take out the kick drum and start adding in a snare as like a build-up element, you know, with like some other extra notes just to keep it a little bit interesting. But by pulling out the kick, I make the listener really want it. So then for like the last few measures of the second drop, when I bring the kick in playing eighth notes, it's like so intense. And then I also, you know, right before the outro begins, I take out Lady Gaga's voice for a second and then have her say, "I'm just a rock star" again, to kind of close the whole rock star idea and like, you know, give it some symmetry with the other times she says, "I'm just a rock star, I'm just a rock star." And then, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say there. And then for the outro, I take out the clap, I take out Lady Gaga talking, I keep the rolling bass line going, keep the ride going. Then you'll see me slowly start to subtract elements. But here you can kind of think of this as like the credits sequence. Actually, my collaborator on this track is coming over tomorrow, and we're going to work on the music video for this track. So this is where we're going to, you know, have a credit sequence. But you know, by this point, the song is basically done. We're going to let the DJ mix it into the next track, and so we don't need to do anything too complicated. We could just gradually pull out elements until things come to a conclusion. You'll hear me you'll hear me high pass away the kick drum, kind of like in Kadam's track from earlier today. Muscle car over bike. I feel like it would be even better if the engine sound was dirtier in the background almost. The engine sound was so cheesy. It's what I had on Splice. You know, it's EDM, so maybe we shouldn't feel afraid to go a little cheesy sometimes, but...
I'm not saying it's bad. I never said that.
Fair point. It's definitely vivid, right? Like, you could hear that it was some kind of engine revving in it.
You saw me crack up.
I did see you crack up. That was great. But yeah, let's play the second drop. Let's start from our cheesy engine revving sound and go to the end. You can see how things come to a conclusion. So, or here rather.
I'm just a rock star.
Yeah, so maybe one interesting thing to note in the middle part there, I reused that reverse reverb of Lady Gaga's voice from the intro here in the outro, tie everything together. It's like that reverse reverb is a really effective sound for creating a sense of like something's about to happen. And then, you know, I have like some crash cymbals on the first beat of each 8 bars to kind of give it some emphasis or like sharp line. Have some downer sounds to again release some of the tension. And maybe you heard a lot of these reverse cymbal sounds. I use those pretty liberally throughout this entire song, just as an easy way to create a sense of anticipation right before major changes in the tone of the track, like, you know, right before the drop, halfway through the break, right before this like massive rock star section. But yeah, and then I just kind of, you know, near the end here, I'm just kind of gradually fading things out. I high pass away the bass from the low frequencies from the kick, fade out the high frequencies from the bass, make it smaller, and then, you know, end with a crash cymbal. Just give the DJ something to mix out of. Yeah, so I know we're a little over time, but hopefully that gives you some ideas of how to structure a track to make like a coherent storyline that leads through. You know, ideas for pulling back some of the energy, adding more energy in, how long you might want to make different sections, and overall just like a way to tie together the various elements we've talked about. And I'll send a link to a previous to last cohort's live stream where I talked about another of my songs, which had some different kind of song structure strategies to it. But yeah, so homework for this week is to bring in one of your favorite tracks into Ableton, look up the BPM online, annotate where the different sections are, you know, the intro, build up, drop, and then maybe try to, you know, depending on how much time you have, sketch out a track that fits with that kind of structure. Or maybe if you have an existing track, you can try to adapt it to the structure of an inspiration track. There's nothing wrong with reusing the structures of songs that you love that work really well. We use them because they're effective. So, should this work with any genre of music or only electronic? I mean, this says EDM 101, but you know, if you want to use a rock song or a pop song or heck, classical music, it's just some genres like classical can have very complicated structures. But you know, it could also be very inspiring to take like, you know, a rock song, figure out its structure, and then try to adapt it for EDM. So like a lot of pop songs often have 2 choruses, then a break, then a third chorus. And then sometimes with like trance songs, they'll have kind of a long intro, a breakdown where it's just the main melody, and then like a finale sort of major drop section. So not so much this 2-drop idea. Yeah, I would say, you know, whatever song you're vibing with most heavily right now, or that you really enjoy, I would say go with that. I don't want to constrain you too much. And then next week we'll do feedback on tracks. I'll try to address some of the like vocal chopping and texture requests, and try to put something together for melodies. And then we're gonna do the final act, which is collaborating with other producers. So yeah, get ready for that. Anything else before we adjourn for today? Sorry if you saw any last minute ads. I was really getting into the sauce there at the end. And feel free to post in the Discord if you have any questions. And I'll set up a poll for the people in New York. We can do like a graduation meetup at a bar somewhere. All right. See y'all later.